Hi there, it's Nicole, and today I have a card showcasing the Tim Holtz Crazy Dogs stamp set. This is a brand new stamp set available in the Simon Says Stamp Masterpiece box collection. You can get it right now, or you could pre-order this stamp set individually right now from Simon Says Stamp. I'm going to be using 3 of the images from the Crazy Dog stamp set. I've got this scrap of watercolor cardstock here. I'm going to use a little bit of the masking technique. I'm going to go ahead and put my dog down first. I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. I'm going to be watercoloring these images. That's why I'm using some watercolor cardstock. I did stamp off the dog legs on some masking paper here. I'm really only needing those front 2 legs, so that's why I didn't stamp the whole image, just creating a really quick and easy mask. That way I can layer the dog dish and dog bone there right next to him. The dog images are absolutely adorable. If you are a dog person, I think you will love these stamps. They go in the same collection as the original Crazy Birds, and then there were Crazy Cats, and now Crazy Dogs. So fun. Next, I'm going to want this dog bone to be the next image in the forefront. The dog is first because he's going to be in front. Then the dog bone, so I'll go ahead and stamp that image, leave my mask in place, go ahead and stamp the bone on another little piece of masking paper. You can also use Post-it, little Post-its or Post-it tape, things like that if you want to. I'll place that dog bone in place and finally ink up the dog dish and stamp that right in place. I can go ahead and remove those masks, and now I have one cohesive image, perfect for coloring in. I am going to take a greeting from the Tim Holtz Crazy Talk stamp set and stamp that right there, just because I love how those greetings coordinate with the Tim Holtz images, but you could definitely use anything that you maybe already have. Any kind of greeting will work with these. I am using Distress inks to color in my images. I simply took markers or the ink pads, either one will work, scribbled them on an acrylic block, and then I'm picking up the color with some water it down a little bit, and then I'm starting to paint. I'm using several colors of markers here, the Gathered Twigs, and espresso stain, mostly for the dog, a little spun sugar for the tongue. I'm working in that ground espresso to highlight some of those darker areas, which I absolutely love, and I think that really helps give that depth and dimension to the dog. However, I will be going back in here and pulling in some black soot distress paint, or ink rather, and that's really going to help even add more dimension to the dog. So just working in kind of small areas, blending out that color. You don't want to oversaturate the paper too much. However, I found that this particular watercolor cardstock works pretty well. You just don't want it to pill up. So if you need to go back over a certain area, I would suggest you either let it sit and dry, or you can hit it with a heat tool and then go back in with your watercolors. Just going to keep building on the color here, a little light pink on the inside of the ears. Here's that black soot, the inside of the mouth, the nose as well, lightening it near the top for a little dimension. Here's where I'm going in and adding some of that black soot in some of those areas where the stamp itself has some of those distressing marks. So those are going to be naturally easy places to add some kind of shadowing and dimension. You can blend it out a little bit. I didn't blend it out too terrible much, just a tiny little bit. But it really gives the dog some nice definition. I'm going to take a little picked raspberry now and add dimension to the tongue. The spun sugar was just a little too one-dimensional for me, so I did go with a little two-tone. I'm using some candied apple for the dog dish. Again, where those darker areas are on the dog dish, I'm simply picking up some of the ground espresso and darkening some of those areas. For the dog food itself, I'm using any of the browns or blacks from my acrylic block, so I don't have to go get any additional colors. For the dog bone, I don't want to add a ton of color, so I'm using a little antique linen just around the edges, maybe even a little gathered twigs in a couple of areas. I'm using the black soot to ground my image by drawing in a little line here and then blending it out with water. It's going to give the illusion of some ground. Don't want to forget those back legs. Make sure and blend that out really nicely. You could definitely leave it like it is, but I am going to go ahead and add some color to the background. I did color in the dog collar with peacock feathers and candied apple, but I'm using that peacock feathers as well, very watered down, to color in just around the entire image to add just a tiny tint of color to the background. If it's too light, I did go back in and add a little more color and picked it up with a little less water before blending it out. That's just going to make the whole image really pop. It's very, very watered down. I don't want it to take away or distract from the rest of the image at all. Now, I did accidentally get a little too much water into one part of the face on the dog, which made some of the brown ink bleed. What I did was carefully kind of blot it dry and then go back in with some of the peacock feathers ink and blend it back out. I have got a side fold note card here and then the Simon Says Stamp diagonal stripes background stamp. I'm going to use them with the Misty. It's going to give me a really easy stamped impression this way. Sometimes these large background stamps can be tricky to work with, and I'm going to use one of my favorite dye inks for getting a really crisp black stamped image, especially since I'm not going to be doing any coloring with this. This is the Lawn Fawn Black Licorice ink. So I am just making sure I'm covering this entire background stamp really well. I'll go ahead and replace my side fold top card base there. I can't really use the magnets because I'm covering the entire card base with this design. So I'm just pressing it down really well, making sure I get it completely covered before I lift it and open it. And perfect stamping. Love that. So easy with the Misty. The diagonal stripes is my go-to when I feel like my card needs a little something, but I'm not sure what. I love the look of the black and white stripes. I also stamped this trio of hearts from the Crazy Things stamp set, which is the accessory stamp set for all of these great crazy critter images from Tim Holtz. I'm coloring them in with a little candied apple and black soot. And then I will die cut these with the coordinating Crazy Things dies. The great thing about coordinating dies for all of these images is they cut almost right around that black line, hardly leaving any of that white at all. I love that about the Tim Holtz dies. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere my watercolored strip directly to my card base there with the great diagonal stamping. I'm going to run a little line of glue along the top and bottom. I've trimmed down a couple strips of red cardstock already. Lay those in place. And I'm going to let that glue completely dry and then I can just snip off the ends. The little hearts themselves I'm going to attach with some Zotz Bling glue dots. They're teeny tiny adhesive dots that work great for small die cut images, sequins, all kinds of things like that. They're my preferred way to attach any of those kinds of things. I decided to die cut these instead of stamping them directly on this strip because I wanted one of those hearts to slightly be off of that background. It's just going to make that whole strip kind of more cohesive to the entire card. I love having a little element hang off of the main strip when I do a card like this. Just going to clean up the edge, anything that's overhanging a little bit. Use my scissors to snip that off. And finally, I want to add a few finishing details. One of the things I like to do is add some Wink of Stella clear glitter pin. I'm going to do that to the hearts as well as the little circle tag on the collar. Go ahead and make sure you clean that off if you switch to different colors. And then I always like to work on the eyes. I think the eyes completely make a critter or person image. So I'm using a black glaze pen to color in the eyes with black, and then I'm going to completely wait for that to dry. Once it's dry, I'm going to take a white pen and finish off the eye, and I think that just makes the whole thing really pop. I'm using the Ranger Multi-Medium to attach some teeny tiny Pretty Pink Posh heart confetti. These are the silver heart confetti pieces, and I'm going to attach those, just a sprinkling of them with the die cut hearts that I already have, as well as down below. Again, it's just one of those little finishing touches. They don't add a ton of bulk or anything like that, but they really help embellish the card design. I like to use the clear end on the quick stick tool to pick them up. The static electricity really kind of helps pick them up. There's nothing sticky here, but they're so teeny tiny that I find with the sticky end of the quick stick tool, they stick to it and don't really adhere to the adhesive on my card. Once I have all of those down, I have one last thing that I want to do, and I'm going to take the glossy accents and go over the eye. And I'm just going to put a nice layer of that on the eye, let that completely dry. Go ahead and replace the tip on my applicator tip. And that is going to finish off this great Hello Friend Crazy Dogs card. Thanks for watching this video showcasing the new Crazy Dogs stamp set from Tim Holtz. The supplies I've used to create this card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more cards that you might be interested in. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.